Yo, what's up, y'all? It's Cohen back here again today with another video. This is the first video of what I'm going to call preview week for the NBA season. From today all the way up until the day that the NBA season starts, every single day you're going to get a video somehow previewing the NBA season. My ideas for videos are this video, where I'm going to give you one strength and one weakness of every team in the East, another video doing the same for the Western Conference, a video reacting to y'all's predictions on Twitter. I'm going to make a tweet about that probably tomorrow, asking you all what are your thoughts on the NBA season. Do you have any bold predictions? And reacting to those, I'm going to give you my full predictions in terms of standings and awards, stuff like that. I think it's going to be pretty fun. It's going to be an interesting way to kind of get into the groove of things and get everyone excited about the season. I cannot wait for the NBA season to start, and I thought this would be a good way to kick off the new season of content as well as games. So, like I said, the point of this video is I'm going to go through and give you one strength and one weakness for every NBA team. These are going to vary. Some teams don't have many weaknesses. Every team has something, but some teams don't have too many weaknesses, so it'll kind of vary, and I'm going to give a quick explanation because there are 15 teams, and I don't want this to take like 25 minutes or anything like that. So I'll just go into it briefly. If you want any clarification, go ahead and comment below. Comment below if you do have an Eastern Conference favorite team or even Western Conference to kind of give me some info for my next video when I do this for the West. Let me know let me know what strength and weakness your team has. Do you disagree with what I say in this video, which is fine, or do you agree with me? Did I get your team right? I'm going to go in order of the standings from this past season in the Eastern Conference, so starting with the Philadelphia 76ers and making our way all the way down to the bottom. So, like I said, starting with the Philadelphia 76ers, their strength, in my opinion, is defense. I'm kind of looking at them, not sure if Ben Simmons is going to play or not, but even if Ben Simmons doesn't play, Joel Embiid is an excellent defensive anchor, and you have another all-defensive player in Matisse Thybulle, so if you throw in Ben Simmons into that, you have three all-defensive caliber guys. This team hangs their hat on the defensive end. Their weakness is their secondary star. Tobias Harris had a really good season this past year. He kind of proved that his contract wasn't so much of a fluke, that he deserved to be making big money, but I'm just questioning how reliable he is as your secondary star for a team trying to compete for a championship. We know about Joel Embiid. We know they have good role players, but someone has to be a consistent second star night in and night out. Ben Simmons has kind of struggled in that role over the course of his career, and I'm not quite sure how well Tobias Harris is going to do if Ben Simmons doesn't play and he has to be that number two guy. It's just, I think there is that consistency there, but especially when we reach the playoffs, that's where I kind of worry a little bit. Next, with the Brooklyn Nets, their strength is their overwhelming talent. That big three is one of the most talented trios of players of all time. Kyrie, James Harden, Kevin Durant, unstoppable. If those three are healthy, that team is a championship contender. Pretty much whoever you throw around them, it doesn't really matter. They're going to be a team that could win a championship. Now, the biggest weakness is keeping that talent on the court. We're already seeing it with Kyrie Irving with the whole vaccination issue. I already made a video talking about that. I don't want to get into it too much, so go watch that if you want to hear my thoughts on that situation. But also, James Harden and Kevin Durant have kind of seen some injuries over the past couple seasons. They're also going to be resting every now and again, so how does that build chemistry? And they're going to have to be on the court more without Kyrie Irving because you need to still get a decent seed. You don't want to go into the playoffs having guys rested a bunch and be like the 5 or 6 seed, even though the Nets have enough talent to overcome something like that. It's just a question of, can they keep all that talent on the court? You also have LaMarcus Aldridge, who is coming off of a really scary medical diagnosis. Hopefully that doesn't come back in any way. Blake Griffin has had some injury issues. It's just a question of, can you keep all the talent on the court at once? Because if you can, you're an unstoppable, very hard to beat team. If you can't keep it on the court, things get a lot easier for other teams playing you. For the Bucks, their biggest strength, I also think, is defense. Drew Holiday. He was the big piece that kind of shifted them around. They were always a good team, and even though Drew Holiday was inconsistent in the playoffs offensively, his defense was really what kind of sealed things for that team. His defense. Giannis is a defensive player of the year. Brook Lopez is a good rim protector. They've got good defenders all over the court, and that is one of their big pluses. They can lock you up, and you can't really do much about it. The versatility that they have is insane, but even just between Giannis and Drew, you throw in Chris Middleton, who's a pretty solid defender himself. That team has so much defensive versatility that it's really tough to stop. Their biggest weakness, I would say, is bench inconsistency. This is a very, very strong team. Probably the biggest thing for me is, like, your backup point guard is George Hill. You're going to be relying on some younger players. You're not going to have Dante DiVincenzo. So Grayson Allen is going to come into a pretty big role right away. And from what I've seen in the preseason, he's going to handle that well. But there is always a question of how things kind of adjust to each other. How do these new pieces fit in? So really, I would just say that inconsistency could be the biggest problem. But this is a pretty stacked team. They really don't have many weaknesses. For the Knicks, once again, their biggest strength is defense. We're seeing a common theme through these first few teams. The Knicks can lock you up. That's not a question. Tom Thibodeau is a great defensive coach, maybe the best in the entire league. That's what the Knicks hung their hat on this past season. That's why they got the 4 seed, was their great defense. And then in the playoffs, their biggest weakness got exposed, and that is scoring. They don't have consistent scoring threats. Now, adding Kemba Walker is a big piece to that equation. If Kemba Walker can be the player that he is without injuries, if he's able to stay healthy and be consistently on the court, I think he could do a big job of kind of alleviating that issue of scoring. Derrick Rose was their best scorer in the playoffs, and Derrick Rose was once upon a time an MVP, but if he is your best scorer in a playoff series in 2021, you don't have enough scoring. RJ Barrett could take a jump. Emmanuel Quickley could take a jump as well. But for right now, before we see those jumps, reminder, this is just before the season. This could all change during the season when guys make jumps. But right now, scoring is their biggest issue. For the Hawks, their biggest strength to me is just how good they are in pick and roll situations. Trae Young kind of mastered the pick and roll last season. You either stepped up on him and he got a free open lob to either John Collins, Clint Capella, or even sometimes a kickout opportunity to like a John Collins, or if you guarded the roll threat, he hit you with one of the most reliable floaters in the league. Trae Young is a master at the point guard position, and his ability to manipulate the pick and roll, which is like the simplest and most commonly used play in all of basketball, makes their offense really difficult to stop. Even if you know what's coming, there are so many different options that they can go to that it's impossible to truly know what you're up against. Their biggest weakness, I would say, is they're going to have a hard time kind of replicating what they did. The Atlanta Hawks had an incredible, way beyond everyone's expectation season where they went all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals and pushed the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks to 6 games. They had a great season. And sometimes you can have kind of issues and frictions when a team doesn't quite immediately get back to those expectations. They know what they're capable of. They just did it. So if they kind of come out a little bit slower or they're not quite meeting those expectations, players could get frustrated and maybe changes might have to be made to kind of figure out why they aren't meeting those expectations. Also, kind of a side note, they have some injury problems. Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter have dealt with injuries. Trae Young had an ankle thing at the end of last season. So if they can't keep guys on the court, that could be another problem that doesn't result in them meeting expectations. For the Heat, their biggest strength, once again, defense. Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, PJ Tucker, Bam Adebayo. Duncan Robinson, not a great defender. The other 4 guys in that starting lineup, good defenders, some even great defenders. Bam is a guy that could win a Defensive Player of the Year. PJ Tucker's always been locked down and an absolute nuisance to go against. Jimmy Butler is a great all-defensive level guy. They can lock up your best player. Easy. Not that difficult. They can do it. They're just so versatile defensively. Bam can guard wings, bigs. Jimmy can play bigger than he is. Kyle Lowry can play a little bit bigger than he is. These guys, we know PJ Tucker can play bigger than he is because the Rockets had him playing at center a couple seasons ago. This is a team that's really going to be hard to score against, and if their offense can get clicking a little bit, they'll be tough to stop every night. Their biggest weakness for me was bench production. They've kind of had some issues where guys aren't quite fully healthy. They're also going to be relying, due to the lack of Victor Oladipo, a lot on guys like Gabe Vincent and Max Strus to start the season. They are solid players, but you need good bench production in this league, and if they're not able to be as reliable as they hopefully can be for Miami Heat fans, that second unit is going to be a big drop-off from that first unit. For the Celtics, their biggest strength, Tatum and Brown. Their top 2 guys. That is one of the best young duos in the entire league. Tatum is a guy that I think is going to be an MVP someday. I love Jaylen Brown. He's one of my favorite players in the league. He can score, he can lock you up, he can do whatever. Those 2 guys as a duo are enough to take this team a lot higher than many people think that they probably can. For me, their biggest weakness is once again bench production. They're relying on a lot of young guys. Peyton Pritchard, who had a great season last year, is going to have a bigger role. Aaron Nesmith, who I like a lot, he's going to have to step up. Robert Williams needs to stay healthy to be their bench center, assuming they do start Al Horford, which I think they will. Josh Richardson, Dennis Schroeder, can he go back to his sixth man of the year role? Whichever one of those guys they don't start. They've just got a couple of question marks. If things are able to come together, I think the Celtics team can be a lot better than people think they're going to be, but there are those questions. For the Wizards, their biggest strength is depth. I feel like this team has solid players all throughout the rotation. That was probably their biggest issue last season, was they weren't very deep. They had Russell Westbrook, they had Bradley Beal, and then not a lot after that, mainly due to some injuries, like losing Thomas Bryant for the whole season, losing Deni Avdija, who I think is going to have a pretty solid season. I like what the new vision is for him as a player from Wes Unseld Jr., their new coach. I think this team is going to be very deep. The problem is they don't have a lot of star power, and that's my biggest weakness. It's Bradley Beal and then a lot of really solid players. Spencer Dinwiddie is a guy that maybe could be an all-star if things break his way. Kyle Kuzma is a solid player. I like Rui Hachimura's potential. Daniel Gafford showed a lot of potential this past season. I like Deni Avdija. They have a lot of guys that can kind of be solid players, but in this league, you really need star power. It's tough to win without star power, and so that's something that I could see holding them back. In clutch time moments, if they're clamping up Beal, can Dinwiddie go get them a bucket? Can Rui Hachimura go get them a bucket? Who is going to step up in those big time situations? For the Pacers, their biggest strength, I think they're going to have a great offense. If TJ Warren's healthy, you have Brogdon, you have Warren, you have Sabonis. Turner can hit some threes. Karis LeVert is a guy that once upon a time scored almost 20 points per game. This team has a lot of potential to score the basketball. Their biggest weakness, though, is their health. They cannot stay healthy, it feels like. Sabonis, he's a guy that is pretty reliable. Miles Turner's missed time. TJ Warren just disappeared the last season. He hasn't been able to stay on the court. Karis LeVert is dealing with some health issues. Jeremy Lamb has dealt with some issues. It just feels like you can never get the whole Pacers team on the court. If they're able to get that, they're a really talented squad. It's just a question of, can they actually find the time where everyone is able to play? For the Hornets, their biggest strength is guard play. LaMelo Ball, Terry Rozier, James Bouknight, just going off a couple of names. They have a lot of talent there. Ish Smith as well, a new addition to the team. The Hornets are going to have a great guard rotation. They're going to be able to really put up points with the backcourt, whether it's starting or bench, but their weakness is the play of their big men. They've got Plumlee. That's about it as a center. You've got PJ Washington, but he can't really play a lot of center because he's more undersized. Miles Bridges is listed as a power forward on their depth chart, and he's not super tall for a power forward. Definitely can't play center. They're probably going to have to rely on some minutes from Kai Jones, who I do like, but he's also very raw and young. Thankfully, he won't have to do too much. Probably just catch lobs from LaMelo Ball, Terry Rozier, and try and be a little bit of a rim protector at times. But there's just a lot. It's just thin there in the front court, especially at the center position. If Plumlee gets hurt, they really don't have a reliable option at center. I wouldn't be surprised if they traded for someone at some point during the season. For the Chicago Bulls, their biggest strength is their starting five. They are one of the most talented starting fives in the NBA. You have Lonzo Ball, who just had a great season. All-star Zach LaVine. Former All-star, could have been All-star this past season, DeMar DeRozan. Promising young upcoming player in Patrick Williams, and then another all-star in Nikola Vucevic. They have three guys who could have all been all-stars this past season. A couple of them were, but all three of them could have been. You throw in another guy in Lonzo Ball, who I think fits really well, and Patrick Williams, who I think is going to have a good season. Their starting five is one of the most talented in the NBA. Their biggest weakness for me is their bench front court and rim protection. They don't have a lot of great rim protection. Their best rim protector is probably Tony Bradley, which shout to him. Thunder legend, but beyond that, just not a lot of production in the bench front court. They've got some guard play. They've got Kobe White and Alex Caruso, but that bench front court might get feasted on by bench units, and so they definitely need to figure out a way. Billy Donovan has to figure out how to make sure that you have some of the starters on the court at all times. Don't do bench completely lineups because you have so much talent. In that starting five, you need to kind of disperse it throughout rotations. For the Raptors, their biggest strength are their 2 through 4 positions. At the 1, it can be kind of shaky, but at the 5, you really don't know what you're going to get with Khem Birch, which I think is their biggest weakness. We'll talk about that in a second. But 2 through 4, I like OG Anunoby. I think he's in for a great season. Fred VanVleet as well. I think he's in for another great year. Pascal Siakam, I think, has become underrated. So when he comes back from injury, another guy that's going to have a great season, I think. But the center position, you have Khem Birch and Chris Boucher, who it seems like Nick Nurse likes him more as a bench big. You really just don't have much depth there. And that was a problem that they had last season. They kind of still need to address it. Maybe they'll address it at some point, but for right now, they haven't. For the Cleveland Cavaliers, their biggest strength is their backcourt. Darius Garland, I think, is going to be a most improved player candidate. Colin Sexton is going to be another guy that, if the Cavaliers perform well, could be an all-star conversation. He's a great scorer. That backcourt is electric. Their biggest weakness, in my opinion, is their youth. They're a really, really young team. A lot of guys on this team I think are going to be good. Isaac Okoro, I love Evan Mobley. Jared Allen is pretty good, but they're just a really young team. That's their biggest issue. I think down the line, this core of guys could be an incredible roster, but for right now, they're just young, and that's fine for a rebuilding team. For the Magic, they're not very good. Probably their biggest strength, I guess, would be guard depth. You have Cole Anthony, you have RJ Hampton, who I like a lot. You have Markelle Fultz, you have, of course, Jalen Suggs. You have a lot of really fun young guards that you can mix and match at the 1 and 2 positions, and at any point, they're going to be a fun team to watch with their guards. They're explosive, they're dynamic, they're going to be fun. Their weakness, similar to the Cavaliers, is they're just really, really young. This team doesn't have a ton of established talent. It's just all young guys working, developing, and getting better, and that's perfectly fine. For the first year of this Magic rebuild, they're just improving. And finally, for the Detroit Pistons, their biggest strength, once again, identical to the Magic, is guard depth. Killian Hayes, I think, is going to have a good year. Cade Cunningham, of course, #1 overall pick. I like his game a lot. Those two guys are going to be a super fun guard duo to watch. And their biggest weakness is they're really, really young. It's exact same as the Magic and the Cavaliers. They've got a lot of talent, but really their main vet is Jeremy Grant, and he himself really isn't that old. You've got Killian Hayes, who's super young, Cade Cunningham, who just got drafted, Isaiah Stewart, Sadiq Bey. You have a ton of really fun players to watch, and they're going to be good sooner than later. I think that this talent is going to develop very quickly, but overall, they're just a young team right now, and so don't be too hard on them. They're still up and coming. Those are my thoughts on all of the Eastern Conference teams. Let me know if there's another strength or weakness that I didn't mention for your team. There are other strengths and weaknesses. These are just the ones that I want to highlight for each team. Something that I found really interesting. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below, and let me know if you have any ideas for this preview week. Let me know if you're excited for it. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I appreciate y'all watching. I will see you all later. Real one, say it back.